Contrary to how I look, this has nothing to do with actual vampires. Hey, I'm Amy and welcome back. Today I am checking Les Vampires off of the 1001 movie list. I don't know why I thought that watching this all 7 hours, all 10 parts in one sitting was a good idea, but by the end I was going nuts. This is a very long movie and this will probably be a very long video, especially since we all know how much I love to talk about silent films. So let's get started with a very attempted brief synopsis of this movie. For most of the characters, I will just be using their first initial because I am really bad with pronouncing foreign languages. I'm really bad with pronouncing English, and that's like the only language. See, it's the only language I really know. I don't even want to attempt to pronounce these names in French because I know I will butcher them. So I will just be using their first initial and putting their name down here at the bottom of the screen so you know who I'm actually talking about. So most of this I'm not really going to be talking about story-wise, it's just for the summary part. Les Vampires is a legendary 10-part, 7-hour French silent crime serial. It follows a band of sneaky criminals called the Vampires, but they aren't actually vampires. The intrepid journalist G and his trusty sidekick M try to track down the vampires, but are often outsmarted by Irma Vep, an anagram for vampire, the strategist behind all of the vampires' exploits. The DVD came with this really cool insert that I thought would have some more information on the behind the scenes or any historical facts about the movie, but it was really just about the director's journey to getting to filming and making this serial. And the book really only broke down each part of the series, so I was kind of upset that there weren't any fun film history facts for me to learn. This is a classic example of a really great silent film. Each part of this film or this entire series is a great example of a really great silent film. It has all of the basic things you usually find within a silent film. The music depicts the tone of each scene or what the character is kind of going to be like. So if it's a villainous character, there's some dastardly music or some very high strings signaling it's going to be a tense moment, but it also has some mellow music, just general ambient noise. It uses intertitles, which are these cards like this, to depict characters, dialogue, and location changes. And slightly over-exaggerated movements and acting, but not as much as you would usually think when you think of a silent film, the near vaudevillian style of Buster Keaton or Charlie Chaplin's comedies. The set design in this was also really amazing. The vampires use a lot of trap doors or hidden little things to get around, so they had to make the sets really big and bold to fit these kind of things in, and I thought that was really amazing how they did that. And they even had some really cool stop motion effects that were used multiple times throughout the film, which was kind of surprising to me because I didn't even know they knew that filmmaking technique in 1915. Some really cool parts that I very much enjoyed out of this was the colorization of different scenes or sets or locations, really. The colorization probably came much longer after this film had been released. I believe the colorization was a part of the DVD I actually bought, but they had colorized outside to be green, nighttime to be blue, the interiors of certain scenes to be different shades of sepia, but it was so cool to just see the different changes in color for different locations, and that way you kind of got a better feel for what was happening within the film. And finally, one of my absolute favorite parts of this, even though it was such a long slog to get through 7 hours of a silent film, each part, all 10 parts of this, felt like you were watching a different chapter of a really great short mystery novel. So now some of the things I have to nitpick at with it. Even though it is a silent film from the early 1900s, the early cinema, I did find a couple things that kind of bothered me, but if this movie was made today, it wouldn't be there, and I very much forgive them for some of these. The first one of those is the translation of the French writing, if there was any French writing, or a French newspaper article. The way that they edited and overlaid the English on top of it was very shoddy, and I probably could have done it better, and I'm not even the world's greatest editor. So that, I think, is on the part of the company that produced this DVD for distribution. So I'm not holding that against the movie. And then a couple other things were more or less things that you couldn't really help back then. Things like people looking at the camera or off to the side of the camera, very obviously looking at the director or somebody else for directions, or just listening to the director or somebody else talk, or a distraction because they weren't recording audio. People could be walking around talking and the actors on stage would get distracted and look at whoever was talking off screen. So that kind of was a little weird and annoying at times, because it's not like anybody was ever shown coming from that side of the camera. So it wasn't like they were looking at anybody. The next two are a little bit more nitpicky on my part. Some parts felt very, very slow to me. It just felt like they were dragging on, showing someone completing a puzzle to get to where the vampires were, or it was just people walking constantly, just a long shot of them walking. It just felt very boring to me, and I don't know if it was just because I had been watching this go on forever and I kind of got really bored of it towards the end, but I think they could have trimmed it down a little bit, maybe saved them like 30 minutes overall. Not a whole lot in the grand scheme of things, so I guess it's okay that they kept them in there. The last one is, for me, it was kind of hard to keep track of all of the characters. There were a ton of characters. I don't know if it was just because the camera lenses were in such soft focus, or that the camera was shot on a tripod filming the entire room, so all of the characters were a little bit farther away than you would see in a normal film today. So it's kind of hard to see exactly who was who, but a lot of the men did look alike, so I don't know if that was just me not realizing what characters were what, but because nobody was like physically calling out, you are G or you are M, you don't really get the sense of who somebody is. And both of those last two things all could have been a part of the fact that I had watched this over the span of kind of 3, mostly 2 days, and by the end of it I was just getting so tired of watching this. I think if I had split it up to at least one part a day, so like watch this over 10 days, if I had had that time, I probably would have rather done that. Even though it does have its flaws, because what film doesn't have flaws? Even the most perfect one has flaws. It is a great example of why I love silent films, or films from the early 20th to mid 20th century so much. They only had so much equipment and technology to use, so a lot of the times they were making up different visual effects or camera equipment on the spot or while they were preparing to film. So it's just remarkable to me some of the things that they could do in camera, and it wasn't even in post. Like, most of the effects that you see in modern films today are done during the editing. A lot of it is not done on set. And they did all of their stuff in the camera, which is amazing to me. And I know I talk about this so much. I say it in almost every single video. I just love the fact that they could tell a 7-hour story with no dialogue, only having intertitles as their text or their speech. And the only sound that they had, no sound effects, like you didn't even hear a knock on the door. The only sound was an orchestral score that was added in post-production. Who can say that they do that besides like A Quiet Place or The Artist? Are like the only 2 movies I can think of in modern times that actually are able to tell a story with very little words or dialogue at all. Those are all of my thoughts. Now on to one of my favorite parts of this series, and the clip I chose for this. If you ever search Les Vampires, a still from this clip will come up. It's not even a huge major part. It's not even a really big part that comes into play as much throughout the film. It's only in one of the parts, but it's one of the more famous parts or scenes of this film, but it is a really pivotal turning point within G's investigation. And that is all I have for Les Vampires. As always, these are just my opinions, but I would love to know yours. Have you taken on this massive beast of a series? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you would like to follow along on my progress or just see what movies I have checked off in general, there is a link to a Google Doc in the description down below. May is my birth month, so I thought for all of the videos I am making, besides any new release reviews, they are all going to be kind of throwback videos. And for the 1001 challenge, both videos that I will be doing are going to be on films that came out in the year I was born, 1990. The first one of those is going to be Pretty Woman. And thank you guys so much for watching. I really truly do appreciate every single one of you. Let me know who you are in the comments down below, and let's be friends. If you enjoyed this, leave a like and subscribe if you're new, because I love talking movies, TV shows, filmmaking, film history, and if you've stayed until the end of this, please comment down below just the name of the character that I am. But now I gotta go wash all this Irma Vep off my face. I'll see you next time. Bye.